Hey guys, I'm Caleb Giddings here for GAT Daily, and while I know it may be somewhat rude to be talking about what's the best kind of ammo, really for anything in these trying ammunition times, today we're going to do a video on what's the best 38 special ammo for self-defense. Right off the bat, we have to acknowledge that there are problems answering this question because it's very subjective. Because when most people ask this question, they're not thinking about the type of gun that they're carrying. They just want to buy, quote unquote, the best 38 special. But because 38 special is such a versatile round and can do so many things and can be loaded to so many different pressures, the best 38 special round is actually dependent on the gun that you're using. For example, if you are using a full-size all-steel gun like this Ruger GP100 Match Champion, which is chambered in .357 Magnum, your best 38 special ammo is likely going to be some sort of plus P jacketed hollow point. And the reason for that is the larger guns, your 4-inch guns like that, actually give your 38 specials the ability to expand. If your 38 special is something like this, the much smaller, more compact Ruger LCR with a 3 or even 2-inch barrel, your best ammo probably isn't going to be a hollow point. And now we'll explain why. So out of short-barreled revolvers like this 3-inch gun, or the even more common 2-inch or 1.875-inch guns, rounds like this, the Speer Gold Dot Hollow Point 135 grain plus P, which is a phenomenal 38 special round, rounds like this don't get sufficient velocity to expand. So they're going to act like an FMJ round, but with the additional penalty of more recoil and more muzzle flash than an FMJ round, with none of the benefits that you normally would expect from a jacketed hollow point. But if you take that exact same round and you put it back in this, the Ruger GP100 with a 4-inch barrel, or any other 4-inch barreled revolver like a Smith & Wesson 686 or something like that, now you're starting to get sufficient velocity that the round will actually expand. So you'll get some of the benefits of carrying a hollow point round. And that's why when I'm carrying full-size revolvers like the GP100, like my 586, that sort of thing, I carry those Speer Gold Dot 135 grain jacketed hollow points. Other 38 special rounds that work really well out of full-size guns are the new Federal HST micro load. Well, interestingly, it was developed for short-barreled guns, but independent testing has shown that the 130 grain round, when fired out of a full-sized gun, does also gain the benefits of that additional velocity, and you get adequate penetration and adequate expansion out of it. So that's pretty cool. Some tests have shown that the Winchester PDX-1 Defender, PDX-1, anyway, the Winchester PDX-1 130-ish grain hollow point also works really well out of those 4-inch guns. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention two of the classics of all classics, the famed 110 grain Treasury load and the greatest of all time 158 grain lead Semi-Wad cutter hollow point. The Treasury load was developed back in the day, as they say, with around a 110 grain semi-jacketed hollow point bullet that was being pushed to around 1,100 feet per second. So it's kind of like, 115 grain 9mm round, basically. But it worked pretty well. It had a lot of flash and it had a lot of bang, but the agencies that used it were all very pleased with it. No one's loading the Treasury load anymore today, but interestingly, the Hornady Critical Defense 110 grain plus P 38 special comes pretty close to emulating its ballistics. Like the Treasury load, it underpenetrates in part because of its extreme velocity, which is pushing it so fast. It gets very fast expansion, which causes it to not always penetrate deep enough. Now, if I couldn't have any of these modern bullets like the Speer Gold Dot or the HST Micro or the Winchester PDX-1, what would I pick for a 4-inch revolver to carry? What would I go with? I'd go with the FBI load. And that is the one I mentioned earlier, the 158 grain lead semi-wad cutter hollow point. The reason I would go with that load is, again, out of those 4-inch guns, it's being pushed with enough velocity because it's a plus P round to expand. But if it doesn't expand, it acts a lot like a wad cutter, so it cuts a flatter hole in stuff. And honestly, the FBI killed a whole lot of people with that round, and so did a lot of domestic law enforcement agencies, and it works. No, it's not going to go through a car windshield and retain its shape like a modern bonded jacketed hollow point will, but for the sort of people carrying revolvers on the reg, is shooting through a car windshield really your first concern? Probably not. But now that we've covered big revolvers and my choices for big revolvers, let's get on to the revolvers people actually carry. Small guns like this Ruger LCR, like the J-frames that everybody has, etc., etc. What do I recommend? What's the best round for that? Well, the real answer for this, again, is subjective. And the reason it's subjective is because you have to understand a couple of important things. The first thing you have to understand is how handgun terminal ballistics work. And handguns work by poking holes and stuff. And they don't poke very big holes. There's no hydrostatic shock. That's a myth. There's no energy dump, also a myth. The only way a handgun projectile is going to cause damage is it's got to actually go through the structure that you're trying to damage with it. So when you're shooting at, say, a dangerous threat, like a person who's trying to kill you, the most important thing that you can get from a small revolver is adequate penetration. The round has to go through whatever clothing they're wearing, and it's got to penetrate deep enough to reach vital organs. If it doesn't do that, it's no good. That's why a lot of people, myself included, recommend finding a round that hits to your revolver's sights and does not carry a great recoil penalty. If that means that you've got to shoot 130 grain FMJ because it hits to your sights and you can get good hits with it, great. If that means you've got to shoot 158 grain lead round nose because it hits to your sights and you can get good hits with it, well, in the words of the great Pat Rogers, it did its job when you shot them where they needed to be shot. But there is one other option that we'll talk about, and this is a train that I've been on for a long time. This is a train a lot of revolver guys are on. This is the 148 grain full wad cutter train. And the reason why we're on this train, the reason why we like this full wad cutter bullet, which is a 148 grain bullet that's loaded flush with the case, is because on most J-frame revolvers, it hits to the sights. It just happens to have the right trajectory to hit to where the sights are regulated on these small guns. And because it's a target round, it's doesn't really have a whole lot of recoil. Like, you can shoot an entire box of those. Not that you would in this time and age, because a whole box of those is like $100 right now. But anyway, you could shoot a whole box of them in a practice session without being inordinately fatigued. And that's why I like them. And as a matter of fact, when I carry this Ruger LCR, the 3-inch gun, that's what I carry in it. I carry those 148 grain lead full wad cutters because I like to be able to hit what I'm aiming at, and getting hits is what stops fights. If you look at ballistic testing of 148 grain full wad cutters, they'll defeat the 4-layer denim test, and they'll penetrate 12 to 16 inches in ballistic gel, which is what you want your bullet to do. Are they going to expand? No. But when fired out of a 2-inch gun, neither are these sweet gold dots. So that's it. To answer the question of what's the best 38 round for self-defense, my answer would be from a 4-inch gun, a modern bonded jacketed hollow point, Speer Gold Dot, the new Federal Micro HST, both of those are going to be great. But from a small gun, from the guns that people actually carry, I say go for 148 grain full wad cutters. I'm Caleb Giddings. Hopefully you can find some ammo in these trying times.